recaps here. For most of us, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to come face to face with a stranger that intends to hurt or harm you. But there are some people who have experienced these spine-chilling encounters. The stories they tell are disturbing without a doubt. Here are some chilling true stories of 3 people who've been approached by strangers who invaded their personal space for no apparent reason. Before we continue, if you have a suggestion on how I can improve my content, leave me a comment. Otherwise, consider browsing through some of my other videos on my channel. Let's begin. The spooky neighborhood. Me and my husband had been looking to buy a house for the past few months. I searched through listings, drove around neighborhoods, and even went to open houses, but nothing seemed good enough. I was about to give up my search when a friend of mine told me about this company that specializes in selling homes for lower prices. Our budget was limited, so I decided to contact this company. We found a place. It was quite nice and fit our needs. The owner agreed to sell it to us for cheap, given that it had a checkered past. It had been a home of an abused kid, but now it was just a single mom trying to make ends meet from a position of weakness. On the day of our move-in, there was this one room in the house that made me feel some unease. It wasn't panic or anything so extreme, just a little unsettled feeling that wouldn't go away. I'm not sure why it bothered me more than any of the other rooms in the house, but it did. I didn't mention my feelings to my husband as he was busy unpacking boxes and putting them away. Anyway, I decided to take a walk around and see what the neighborhood looked like in daylight. I was halfway down the block when I saw a little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. He looked like he'd been crying. He was sitting on the curb in front of a house, and it seemed as though he had been using the pieces of glass to draw pictures on the pavement. I thought that was very odd. When I got closer, I could see that some of his drawings were pictures of animals. I wanted to ask if he was okay, but stopped myself. I knew the answer would be no, so I just walked past him. I walked down and at some point realized I was no longer on the sidewalk, but next to an old well instead. There was an old oak tree towering overhead. Something about being there made me tense up, but I kept walking anyway. I tried not to pay too much attention. I told myself it may be due to the stress of home hunting. To my left, I noticed an old abandoned house with its windows boarded up. I decided to take a closer look. Just as I approached it, a hand grabbed my shoulder and spun me around with a fierce grip. I was too shocked to scream. The man was tall, his stance imposing. What made me gasp in terror were his eyes. Cold and blue, they glowed with an inhuman light. "Don't go near it," he said. His voice was deep and gravelly, like he'd been shouting for hours. I couldn't say anything. I was frozen. His grip did not lessen in the slightest as he insisted. I said, "Don't go near it. Now leave before something bad happens," he shouted. He let me go and I backed away. I ran back home as fast as I could. I was terrified. A few days later, I told my husband about the little boy and the man. We made a decision to move out of the neighborhood as quickly as possible and sell the house. An Eerie Gas Station. A few months ago, I was driving home one night. I was very tired after a long shift at work. It was raining, and it seemed like the weather was getting worse. The rain was so bad that I had to squint to be able to see through the windshield. My windows kept fogging up, which made the journey even harder. Suddenly, I heard a beep on the dashboard. I could feel my car intermittently losing power, but it was still able to keep a constant speed. I started to get a little nervous. The light on the dashboard said "check" above it, which meant that my car's engine light had come on. I pulled over and stopped the car on the side of the road. The rain was coming down so heavily that it felt like a waterfall at this point. I phoned my dad to tell him about the situation and asked him if he knew what could be the issue. He told me to get off the side of the road first and pull over in a safer place. I found a spot just up ahead and pulled off the road again, stopping at an eerie-looking gas station. It was closed for the night and had only one street light near it. I called my dad again and he told me that I could need either oil or coolant, but it's unclear what exactly the problem was. I know nothing about cars and my dad was not the best mechanic either. I got out of the car to open the hood and see if I could understand what the issue was. The rain was still bad, but better than it was before. With the corner of my eye, I saw a person walking in the distance. He was walking towards me. I didn't feel safe, especially in this weather and time of night. It was around 2 in the morning. I thought it was weird to see anyone walking this late in the night. I decided to call my dad again and tell him that I saw a strange person walking ahead. He told me to stay where I am and that he was coming to get me. Suddenly I heard a car start up somewhere in the darkness, and then the person that was walking towards me immediately turned around and walked the other way. I found that very strange and somewhat scary. It made me feel that the person may have had bad intentions. Why would someone do that? I decided to ignore the issue with the car and try my luck to get back home. I started the car and made my way out of the gas station. As I drove back home, I began to think about the person who was walking towards me. I thought about all the things he could have done, and it made me feel uncomfortable. At this point, my mind began to wonder, who was that person? I began to imagine all of the possible reasons for why he or she was walking towards me in the dark. So many things ran through my head as I was driving home that night. Maybe I was just extremely tired and made the situation worse in my head than it actually was. I don't know. The dark woods. I never liked the woods and darkness. It's a very creepy place at night if you ask anyone. One night my friends decided to have a drinking session in the woods, and they invited me. I thought it wouldn't be so bad as I wouldn't be alone anyway. I was very skeptical about going, but I decided to go anyway. We all drank for a while, and everything didn't seem as bad as I thought it would be. Some were so drunk they couldn't even light a cigarette. Then, I felt intoxicated enough to wander off by myself to have a wee. Eased myself I did, but I would soon regret it. After I had finished, there was a noise that made the hair on my neck stand up. It sounded like something moving in the leaves. I started to rush back to the party, but suddenly I tripped and fell flat on my hands. The ground was made up of moss, roots, and stones, and they cut into my hands like knives. It was really damn dark, so I couldn't see anything at all. I started panicking because I couldn't remember how to get back to the group or how far away from the party I was. I tried to take a deep breath, but I felt panicky. I started crawling towards the sound of the party, but my movements were so slow and noisy. Then I heard footsteps coming from behind me. It sounded like the steps of someone running. I stopped and looked back to see nothing in sight. However, soon enough, seemingly out of nowhere, a man appeared about 10 feet away from me. He had a knife in one hand and a box cutter in his other hand, and he was wearing some sort of a gas mask. He started sprinting towards me, and I began running towards any light I could see, disregarding my injuries as my adrenaline increased. I could hear him chasing me. I was so scared. I couldn't think straight. There was a street light that I kept running towards. It was the only thing I could focus on, and it felt like life or death. All I wanted was to get to the light, but there were obstacles in my way. I stopped and hid behind a tree to look back. Luckily, I knew I outran the man because I could not hear him anymore. I was exhausted, but I kept running anyway. I did not know where I was headed. I just ran to get away from the potential danger. Terrified by the whole situation, I rushed into someone's house and asked if I could use their phone to call my parents. I just wanted to get back home. Since that day, I have been paranoid of the woods even more. I get nightmares and I wake up sweating. I've never told anyone about this because I know they would just tell me that it's all in my head. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on these 3 encounters? Are they creepy? Have you ever encountered such an incident? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Please consider leaving a like on this video if you enjoyed these stories. If you are hungry for more content like this, subscribe to me. Dark Recaps. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.